and I return to the great Ace Attorney Chronicles, the final chapter, The Resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Just get right into it. So, the time's finally come. Today, we unravel everything. I'll be counting on your support more than ever today, Mrs. Sato. Mrs. Sato? Oh, no. What's the matter, Mr. Naruhodo? Nothing. I was just saying that I'll be relying on your support today, but... I'm so sorry, of course. I know I can be rather incompetent at times, but I shan't let you down. Would you mind helping me to my feet, then? Oh dear, I'm really very sorry. Chisato-san isn't her usual self at all, but that's hardly surprising, I suppose. She's just found out that her father is the partner of a world-famous detective, not to mention... good morning, sir. Lord Van Zeeks. Thank you for all your efforts yesterday. What? Did I hear that correctly? What? Oh, no, nothing. I hope we can clear things up today. I really can't make this man out. His face says, I hate you, but his words are almost jovial today. In fact, he hasn't been very Reaper-like at all since this all began yesterday. Lord Van Zeeks isn't the Reaper, Mr. Naruhodo. Good point. The Reaper? I suppose in hindsight, I shouldn't have allowed that misconception to go unchallenged. Huh? It was my tacit acceptance of that pseudonym. My failure to stop the Reaper becoming something more than a mere legend that led to all this. But you're not to blame for that, Lord Van Zeeks. It's only because serious crime in the capital dropped off so sharply when the public started calling you that. That's why you didn't say anything, isn't it? To be frank, I'm not sure that was the sole reason. And what do you mean? There was a rumor at the time that the Reaper was really the ghost of my late brother. But having been slain by that evil killer, Clint's restless spirit returned as some sort of demigod, to wield a deadly blade of justice where I, by dint of law, could not. Yes, we've heard that story too. Have we? I don't recall that. When I lost him, I felt as though I'd lost my guiding light. I didn't know where to go or what to do. And so, in some small way, I wonder if perhaps those rumors made me feel his absence a little less keenly. Even if I knew it was just an illusion, just some nonsense conjured up by an over-imaginative public. He was obviously extremely important to you. Lord Clint Van Zeeks. Lord Clint Van Zeeks. Ah! I hate that. I don't even know what you call that. It's kind of like a speech impediment in my opinion, but just the way they say the names just wistfully. Well, what's important now is uncovering the truth. That's all that matters. I know that you didn't take anyone's life. And I intend to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt in court today. I never thought I'd say this, but I can see it in your eyes, that burning desire to cut through all the lies and deception. I can't deny it any longer. You are a lawyer of absolute integrity. Thank you. Now, tell me, why do I detect the scent of expensive tea leaves in the air? Oh, Iris, when did you get here? Oh. Why is everyone surprised? brought you one of my special blends. Hurley loves it. He says it helps him to clear his head. Thank you. Oh. That's surely the first and last time I'll ever see a sight like this. You seem different today, Iris. Oh? It's also just occurred to me. Sort of subdued, I suppose. I am not. What happened yesterday is obviously still playing on her mind a lot. She's clearly very troubled about having stolen that autopsy report from Dr. Scythe's laboratory. Alright then. Good luck to you both. I have to make a move now. You're not staying? I thought you'd want to watch today's proceedings. Well, I'd like to cheer you on, obviously. But I've got lots to get ready. Get ready? For what? Oh, yes. Would you like this? Would you take this, rather? Isn't that one of the little felt dolls that's usually dangling from your knapsack? Yes, it's a lucky charm. A little Hurley that I made once. A Hurley? It looks more like a Hairley to me. If for some reason you completely run out of options in the trial today, then just pull this little Hurley's ears as hard as you possibly can. What, pull his ears? That's right. It's a way to bring good luck. I think you might need it. Obviously, there's something hidden inside there that you're gonna have to wait until the very moment where it's like, I'm completely out of options. What do I do? Remember, Naruhodo, twist his ears off. Alright, a little doll of Mr. Sholmes in hair form. You think what we'll need is luck? Just sneaked a peek into the courtroom, and it seemed very different to Noble. Oh, why? Yes, it would seem that a certain someone has decided to pull out all the stops. And what does that mean? What about Mr. Sholmes, Iris? I don't know. He was out all night, and he hadn't come home by the time I left this morning. Oh, I see. Is Professor Mikoto out all night too, do you think, Mr. Sato? Yes, it would seem so. I telegrammed the hotel this morning. And apparently they didn't come back to their rooms last night at all. They? Father and Judge Jigoku, I mean... Judge Jigoku too? That's right, nobody appears to have seen either of them since yesterday. Counsel for the defense and the defendant. Court is about to be in session. Please make your way inside the courtroom at once. Okay, we'll do that here in a minute, though. Good luck, Runo. Good luck, Susie. Because before that... Shoot, I'm gonna have to take care of that from the... Okay, well, maybe I'll have to switch Sholmes' costume, because I haven't turned that on. Yes, thanks, Iris. And you, Mr. Reaper, I hope it goes well. Once again, I thank you for the delicious tea. It was very soothing. Oh, I'm glad. It was poison, so that's great. We must go inside now, Lord Van Zeeks. Here we go. Lord Van Zeeks has always been the formidable prosecutor I've had to lock horns with in court. But not today. Today I battle with another in pursuit of the truth. My best friend, Kazuma Asogi, who I trust more than anyone else in the world. Now I understand what it was that drew me here to Britain all those months ago. Now I know exactly what destiny had in store for me. It's all been leading up to this one day, this one trial, to this one final reckoning. Alright, hold on a minute. Alright. It feels even more oppressive in here than it did yesterday. There are cold stares piercing me like knives from all sides today. Mr. Naruhodo, look! Lord Strongheart? Kazuma must have known beforehand. The ramifications of this trial now extend far beyond the murder of one Scotland Yard inspector. In fact, events have come to light that threaten to rock the very foundations of our country's legal system. The escape of a condemned criminal on the night of his execution, the subsequent unlawful shooting of the man, and the revelation that prison staff must have been complicit in the jailbreak. Britain is currently hosting influential members of the judiciary from countries all over the world. It is imperative that we uncover the truth in these proceedings to avoid international embarrassment. By royal decree, this will continue to be a closed trial, and one over which I, male Strongheart, exercise total and unequivocal authority. Oh goody. The flames still count. What does that mean? 6 jurors' flames just... As was the case in yesterday's proceedings, those here present in the public gallery are distinguished members of the judiciary, assembled to bear witness to a fair judicial process. In other words, a collection of your acolytes, Lord Strongheart. On a personal note, I find this most distressing, Lord Van Zieks. You were a prosecutor of exceptional talent. Much like your brother Clint, in fact. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session for the trial of Beric Van Zieks, who officially stands accused of murder. Counsels for the prosecution and defense, are you in full readiness to proceed? The defense is ready, my lord. As is the prosecution. Yesterday's proceedings brought to light a shocking and disturbing fact. There was a side to the victim, Inspector Tobias Gregson, which was unknown to his superiors at Scotland Yard. Yes, he was carrying out operations in secret, which Scotland Yard knew nothing about. And in those clandestine operations, he had an accomplice, Mr. Daily Vigil, who would be given the inspector's identification and present himself around the capital in order to establish credible alibis for Gregson. In that way, Gregson appeared to be carrying out his regular Scotland Yard work, when in fact he wasn't. At the end of yesterday's session, Mr. Vigil, who had been suffering from amnesia, regained his memory. It would appear he buried his memories of the time deep inside himself as a means of self-preservation, because whilst he was engaged as chief warder of Berkeley Prison, he abetted the convict's escape. Mr. Vigil is currently recuperating at St. Sinners. He's recovered enough to give a signed statement about his movements on the day prior to the incident. He's formally admitted to posing as Gregson whilst investigating the Red-Headed League. Which brings us to the crucial issue of the victim's time of death. The defense yesterday proposed a suggestion that the victim may have been killed 1 day earlier. This was based largely on the discovery of the victim's pocket watch, that the victim's pocket watch had not been found. Criminy. The prosecution has something to report on that subject, my lord. Really? Go ahead, Prosecutor Asogi. I met once again with the coroner yesterday to discuss the issue. She confirmed the defense's suggestion could not be ruled out. It's entirely possible that Inspector Gregson was killed on the 31st of October, the day before his body was discovered. I have here an updated autopsy report that includes the amended details. But the official opinion of the investigation team was made clear yesterday that the time of death was 5 p.m. on the 1st of November. There are indications of an attempt to disguise the real time of death, however. It seems that the natural decaying process of the victim's body may have been slowed by keeping it chilled. That's out of the question. There are no refrigeration devices in that part of London large enough to accommodate a human corpse. My lord, this is more than just conjecture. There's evidence to support the idea. We must investigate it thoroughly. Very well. the court will accept the new report as evidence. However, if this updated report is deemed to be accurate, it would give renewed significance to the movements of the victim on the day before the Fresno Street incident. It would, yes, especially since on that day, Inspector Gregson was using Mr. Vigil to cover up his real movements. It's conceivable that he was killed in the course of his secret activities. I sense that the prosecution has some information regarding those activities. Scotland Yard put an enormous effort into investigating that precise matter yesterday. I think we should begin by presenting the results of that investigation work. So the prosecution calls its first witness now. So hold on. Evidence suggests. Okay, so this one did get updated. Did we ever actually look at this? Like, open it up? We did, yeah. There's the bit of blade stuck in the thing. Yeah, I remember that now. This is where we found, what, his passport? What was this? Yeah, okay. Right, his passport and a bit of blade. Wait a minute, what do you mean that was entered into the court? Didn't we already have this in the court record? But we had this in the court record already. Did I not read that? I thought I read it. So what is this? His identification. Alright, so the prosecution calls its first witness now. State your name and occupation for the court. Inspector Gina Lestrade, reporting a representative of Scotland Yard. What the hell? A self-conferred rank, but never mind. Gina, again? What's your problem, Elder? What's with that Gina again? Look, eh? The boss meant the world to me. He's done more for me than anyone else ever did. Including me, who got you out of prison and found you innocent that one time? Oh, Inspector Gregson, you mean? He got me out of the back slums of the East End and took me under his wing. Taught me that life can have a purpose. So that's why I'm the best person to be standing here speaking for him. Oh, Gina. Right. All out of the goodness of Gregson's heart. Not at all that he had his arm twisted by Mr. Sholmes, no. What's relevant to these proceedings is that the outcome of Scotland Yard's investigations yesterday has revealed that the victim was carrying out some assignment the police knew nothing about. Very troubling. That face. What Strongheart knew. So, Inspector Lestrade, let's hear exactly what it says in that report. Coming right up, sir. All your detectives are supposed to follow orders and investigate what they're told. But a little search of the boss's office turned up a notebook that had a load of secret meetings in it. According to that, the boss was looking into some smuggled goods dealings that day. Looks like it was a big job and all, but the coppers weren't onto it yet. What matters most is, there's witnesses what saw the Reaper at the place too. Smuggled goods? I don't know, do I? I'm just telling you what was written in the book. Tobacco, tea, spices, medicines, goods of all sorts flow into London by illegal channels from across the globe. Okay. It's well known that they're disposed of at regular black markets that take place in the capital, but the police are rarely able to locate them in time. So Inspector Gregson was investigating one of those black markets. It's been suggested that high-ranking government officials may be involved in black market activity. No doubt Gregson was trying to avoid details of his investigations being leaked to the involved parties. That would explain why he was operating on his own authority, without the Yard's knowledge. And do we know where the dealings were taking place at this time? In a particular room of a certain exclusive London gentlemen's club, and on the day in question, the accused is known to have been there. That's the conclusion of Scotland Yard's investigation into the matter. It can't be. But we haven't heard anything about any of this. Members of the club have testified to it. There's no question. The accused, Barak Van Zeeks, was present. That would be a very significant testimony, then. Oh my, but Lord Van Zeeks has made no mention of this at all. In short, Lord Van Zeeks had ample opportunity to murder the victim. Very well, then. Counsel for the defense, begin your cross-examination.
Hold it!
So, you follow orders, do you, Gina? Nah, not me. Above all that, see? Oh. The boss always had special orders for me. Grab us some fish and chips, or go and give Toby his grub, that kind of thing. So, errands more than orders, then. This detective is still an apprentice, after all. Yeah, well, this apprentice ain't one to sit round and wait to be told what to do, even by the boss. That's why I've been doing my own investigations into what happened. I didn't find much at first. A little search turned up a notebook, okay?
Hold it!
So you went through Inspector Gregson's things? Yep, as part of the independent Lestrade investigation. I'm sure your superiors would be delighted that you're taking the initiative. So I snuck into his office when no one else was about. Of course, if anyone at the Yard had seen me going in there, they'd have turfed me straight out onto the street. This is sounding less and less like an investigation and more like something else. The prosecution understands that it was this very detective who discovered the notebook. You got that right. Nothing gets past Inspector Lestrade and her trusty assistant, Chief Inspector Doby. We found it hidden in one of his desk drawers that had a false bottom. That's impressive. So then I went to hide myself where no one could find me, so I could have a butcher's at what was written in it. Because if anyone at the Yard had found me out, they'd have turfed me straight onto the street. Yeah, you said this already. I've given it in now, though, ain't I? I've given it in now, though, ain't I? Sure. And if it weren't for me, it would never have been found. According to that, the boss was looking for some smuggled goods. Do you have any idea where those dealings were taking place? Yep. It was all there in the boss's notes. Let's see if I can remember. As I already said, the illegal dealings were due to take place at a gentleman's club. Yes, I remember, but I was hoping to find out the name of the club. That won't be necessary. What? It's conceivable that the club might be used again by the smugglers in future. Therefore, the prosecution has been asked not to reveal the name of these proceedings. Oh, I don't know what all the fuss is about. It's right here. All I've got to do is read it out. And I could too. I've got this reading game buttoned up now. Can't I show you what I can do? Go on, what's the harm? Judge hasn't signaled his objection yet. I could try to find out. What should I do? I mean, I guess? Like... Why would I not? This is a closed court. The proceedings are confidential. Therefore, there shouldn't be any possibility of the information being leaked. As I explained, there is some possibility of politicians being involved in this affair. The prosecution is rightfully exercising caution, I imagine. No, my lord. The prosecution has no objection. Kazuma? There's no question that Inspector Gregson was looking into these black market dealings. However, it's not yet been established that he was on that particular trail on the day in question. If the defense requires to know the club's name, the prosecution has no intention of being obstructive. Right then. I'll get to show off me reading skills. Apparently the smuggled goods was going to happen at a gentleman's club called the Grouse.
Hold it!
The Grouse? What sort of club is that? Oh, I ain't got the foggiest. Clubs ain't exactly my thing. But I am kind of curious. They're not places where a foreign student like you would be readily admitted. Have you looked in the mirror recently? I'll tell you what. Me and Inspector Toby will go in undercover. I'm sure that'll go over very well. Could you, though? I could pick out a few good marks and see what else I could find out where I was in there. Oh, that's a little sketchy. I really don't think you should go picking out anything. Anyway, that's where these black market dealings were going to take place, is it? Yeah, it's gotta be. That's what the lower-ranking detectives at the yard reckon. Says the even lower-ranking detective. It was a big job, but the coppers weren't on it yet. So how had Inspector Gregson come to find out about it in that case? That's the question, ain't it? But I'm just an apprentice, so... And why didn't he inform Scotland Yard of his findings? Yeah, that's what I was asking myself. 'Cause, you know, I'm just an apprentice. When it suits you, yes. Anyway, the point is, something went on in that club, no question. You can't say that for certain, though, surely. That is, there's witnesses what saw the Reaper of the place, too.
Hold it!
Lord Van Zeeks was at the club. He was. Detectives who visited the club yesterday to make inquiries have confirmed it. Several members report having seen the accused being admitted to the room in question as a guest. Looks like there's no disputing that he was there, then. Well, we know that Lord Van Zeeks was investigating Inspector Gregson, don't we? Perhaps he'd already discovered the inspector's secret notebook. Which led him to the club, you mean? Maybe. Presumably, then, there are also eyewitnesses who can testify that Gregson was there. None have been identified at this time, no. So the all-important victim wasn't seen at this mysterious club. Why? Why ain't you asking Inspector Lestrade here, eh? So that's all I've got to work with. Gina's not holding back with that ice-cold stare of hers, is she? I really don't know what to make of all this. Lord Van Zeeks told us that he was Lord Van Zeeks was telling us he was investigating Inspector Gregson, but he never once mentioned that he met the inspector the day before the incident. You don't think Lord Van Zeeks could have been lying to us, do you? It's not the only way to explain this. Oh? If everything Lord Van Zeeks has told us is true, then there must be a mistake in this testimony somewhere. You mean there are details we've yet to uncover? Exactly. A clue, perhaps, that even Gina hasn't noticed. That's what we should be looking for here. What the hell does that mean? Okay, that was held at a large park. Semi-caught by wonderful handwriting. What was this letter of introduction for again? Oh, right, to give to Governor Caden. Steamship ticket. SS Grouse. Grouse is the club name. First of November. Right, and so then we got the passport. Okay, can we stop reading this? My God. Okay. So does that mean because this is a different chapter, all this stuff didn't carry over? We have to rediscover all the stuff from our evidence again? That would be a major pain. That would be a major pain. No, it wasn't this. Passport. Within 1 week from the 31st of October. Dismissal notice. Okay, that doesn't mean anything. There's nothing special about that. Okay, I don't think we need to do every bit. That's really annoying, actually, though. I mean, that puts more work in that we're gonna have to look at every piece of evidence just because if we noticed anything from something and we try to present it and it's not been logged and updated, then everything is, it's not gonna work. Anyway, yeah, so we can see, where was this? Apparently, gentleman's club called the Grouse. Present.
Objection!
I've read about these clubs that exist here in Britain. As I understand it, they're places where well-to-do gentlemen socialize with friends and colleagues. Don't imagine for a second that a foreign student like you would be admitted. You've already said that. Seriously, is your mirror cracked or something? Do we know for sure that the contraband dealings were definitely happening at a club called the Grouse? The police are currently looking for evidence, but haven't found anything definitive yet. And I'm sorry to say that they probably won't. What do you mean by that? I mean that the place Inspector Gregson was secretly going to visit on the 31st of October may not have been a gentleman's club at all. You're showing very irreverent attitude toward our country's police force there, Counsel. Have you not seen my trials before? If it wasn't a gentleman's club, then what was it? A steamship. You think it's a ship? I have the evidence to prove it. Here. Let me see that. This dark-suited young man is not in the least bit untrustworthy. The other side, my lord. Be more specific next time. Ah, this would appear to be a ticket for passage upon a steamship, yes. The SS Grouse.
Objection!
So there's a steamship named the Grouse that happens to share a name with the club. But I'm afraid to say, there's a flaw in your logic there. How? Look at the ticket. Notice the date of arrival in port. The ship arrived at the port of Dover on the 1st of November. Aha! Day on which the sound, like a gunshot, was heard on Fresno Street. In other words, on the day in question here, the 31st of October, when the victim was on his clandestine mission, that ship hadn't yet docked on British shores. It would certainly make an undercover investigation somewhat challenging.
Objection!
The fact that the steamship hadn't yet reached Britain substantiates the defense's assertion that the victim was investigating the SS Grouse on the day in question. Then show your evidence for that assertion. Very well. In that case, counsel, for the defense, present your evidence to the court now. Evidence that substantiates your claim that the victim was investigating the grouse. It would be the passport.
Take that!
What's this? A passport for travel issued to the victim. Dated the 31st of October. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that just one day before the inspector's body was discovered, there's a distinct possibility he wasn't even in the country. Order! This document is for passage to France. It does appear to have been officially authorized. The day before the SS Grouse arrived at Dover, it docked on the northern coast of France for a night. According to my father, who was on board, at the port of Dunkirk. Dunkirk, France. What could possibly have taken the victim there? I'm impressed, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. I certainly didn't expect you to get your hands on that passport. What? You mean you knew about this? The prosecution's strategy for this trial has been laid down by the Crown Prosecution Office. On the day before the incident, the victim was investigating contraband dealings at the London club. That's the outcome of Scotland Yard's investigations, and the line the prosecution has been asked to follow. But personally, I don't agree. I think the prosecutor's office is trying to hide something. And now that you've expertly disproven their assertion, I intend to reveal what I believe that something may be. What are you playing at, Prosecutor Sogi? The courtroom is a forum for the truth, my lord. Which is why it's my duty to present all the facts, without exception. Let me guess, this was your intention from the outset, wasn't it? The reason Inspector Gregson secretly made his way to the steamship docked in France on the day in question was to carry out a mission for the Reaper. The Reaper? Order. Order! What on earth are you saying, counsel? The prosecution made an assertion in court yesterday. Inspector Gregson was investigating the identity of the Reaper. When he discovered the location of the man's secret hideout, he was killed. As I'm sure everyone can imagine, by the Reaper's hand. But in reality, the truth is the opposite of that. Nani? Inspector Gregson wasn't investigating the Reaper at all. He was, in fact, acting for the Reaper. So, you're saying the mission he was undertaking was, obviously, an assassination. Barak Van Zeeks never carried out any of the actual killings. Whenever the Reaper's victims lost their lives, he always had a cast-iron alibi. Which tells us that he must have had an accomplice. And you claim that was Inspector Gregson? What the hell do you think you're saying, eh? My boss would never have done nothing like that. And yet, when you consider all the facts, it all makes perfect sense. No, it can't be. We also arrived at the same conclusion, didn't we? That Inspector Gregson was operating as the Reaper. Even so, there's no way that the person giving him his orders was Lord Van Zeeks. No, the true Reaper is somebody else. Barak Van Zeeks is not the Reaper. Predictable response from someone who's advocating for the man. And even if it's true that Gregson was operating as an agent of the Reaper, the suggestion that he went aboard the SS Grouse on an assassination mission doesn't follow at all. Oh, you have some solid reason for doubting the assertion, do you, counsel? Absolutely. It's very simple. On the day in question, Nobody was killed aboard that steamship. Professor Mikotoba and Judge Jigoku were on that very ship. If someone had been assassinated, I'm certain we would have heard about it. So funny. You're right, of course. No suspicious deaths were reported on board the ship. But I think, perhaps, you've missed the point. That's precisely why Inspector Gregson himself lost his life. What? Gregson did board the SS Grouse that night, with the intention of dispatching his mark. But his mission ended in failure. Failure? It seems that the defense hasn't yet grasped a very important detail here. What are you talking about? What detail? Inspector Gino Lestrade. Aye, what? The victim's notebook that you read an excerpt from yesterday. Yesterday or earlier? God, my mind is earlier. That doesn't contain details of secret investigations at all. It describes 10 years of assassination plots to be carried out by the Reaper of the Bailey. Has this been put into my evidence yet? No. You're lying. Why are we back in here? Even if all them bludgers got taken out had it coming, the boss weren't the Reaper. Poor Gina. There's no question that Tobias Gregson was heavily involved in the Reaper's activities. You may just be an apprentice, but if you've spent any time at Scotland Yard, you must have heard rumors. I ain't heard nothing, and I don't believe a word of it. Then testify again, as a representative of Scotland Yard. Consider it your chance to defend your boss. I don't... I concur. The witness will give a new formal testimony. Miss Lestrade, you will tell the court everything you know about Inspector Gregson's secret notebook. Okay. Yeah, this notebook does have a load of stuff about what the Reaper got up to these past 10 years. I would like to see it. Names of victims, dates and places and stuff. And the last entry in there was the 31st of October. It said grouse for the place on that date and then the name of the mark. There was a note about him being a criminal that got away from the Reaper and caught 10 years ago or something. But honest, the boss didn't do none of it. He was just investigating the Reaper, that's all. Keep personal opinion out of your testimony, witness. We require only established fact here. This must be so hard for her. You can't deny it now, surely, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. And what can't I deny? The notebook contained the name of the final mark and the location where the assassination would take place. That's information that the victim could only have known if he was working with the Reaper. I don't know, it depends on what the damn name is. So, who was to be this final mark? Go ahead, Inspector Lestrade. Read the name for the court. The name that's written alongside the entry that mentions the grouse on the 31st of October. How do you read this then? Reading's still not her strong suit. That ain't the problem, alright, Odo. Stop reading my mind. It's a funny name. It ain't English. It's hard to read. So it's someone from overseas. Let me have a bash at it. Seishiro. Seishiro? Yeah, Seishiro. Jigoku, maybe? What? It can't be. Seishiro Jigoku? But that's Judge Jigoku. Seishiro Jigoku, certainly not an English name, you're right. But that can't be right. I know Judge Jigoku, and I saw him the day before yesterday, here in London. So I know for a fact that the man hasn't been assassinated. As I said, the Reaper failed. Oh. Gregson missed his chance to kill his mark and return to British shores. But the Reaper wouldn't tolerate the mistake, so he killed the inspector. Personally. The Reaper, of course, being the accused, Barak Van Zeeks. It's an undeniably logical argument. Kazuma, planned for the trial to go this way all along, didn't you?
Hold it!
Pray forgive the discourtesy of filling my hallowed chalice whilst I stand accused of murder. Lord Van Zeeks? The accused has no right to speak uninvited in court. You will return to the dock. I say nothing of whether or not I'm the Reaper. That's the task of this court to decide. But there is one thing I can say unequivocally. That girl is no detective. No, that's right, I ain't. I'm an inspector. Repeating rumors heard around the yard. Reading entries from a notebook of unconfirmed origin. That's not testimony. It's practically a script. No doubt the rest of this trial will go exactly as you clearly planned. Your hatred of me is understandable. In your mind, I'm sure I am the Reaper. What? Who sent your father to the gallows all those years ago? You are in danger of becoming a far more sinister Reaper yourself, by attempting to have me condemned with this feeble excuse for testimony. What did you say? Mr. Naruhodo, this is our chance. My lord, the defense requests that the defendant be allowed to speak. He may be privy to important information relating to the testimony just given by the witness. Very well. I will make this exception and grant the request. The defendant may remain in the witness stand for the cross-examination. Then allow me to toast the court's impartiality. Don't raise your glass in my direction, sir. Counsel for the defense, begin the cross-examination immediately. At once, my lord. This notebook does have a lot of stuff in it.
Hold it!
In other words, it shows that Gregson was basically acting as the Reaper. Not you and all. That ain't the only explanation, is it? He could have been investigating the Reaper in secret, and that notebook said what he found out. If I may, why are you having this accent now? When originally people began referring to me as the Reaper, I didn't object. I believe the power to intimidate London's criminal classes into compliance with the law to be beneficial. But you carried out your own investigations into the true identity of the Reaper, didn't you? Yes, and those investigations proved conclusively that Gregson was one arm of the Reaper. One arm? What are you on about? The Reaper's victims were all extremely shrewd criminals at the top of their game. There's simply no way one person could have taken them on alone. The Reaper is an organization, with you at its head. I had spies at the yard keeping me abreast of Gregson's movements, letting me know when he was elsewhere. So I'd been able to check the most recent entry in his book. I knew the location. You knew it said grouse? Believing it to be a reference to the Gentleman's Club, I went there on the day in question to investigate, alone. So there is a Gentleman's Club named the Grouse. Ah, so that explains why several members of the club claim to have seen you there. But of course the inspector was not there, because at the time he was making his way to the steamship docked on the northern coast of France, as shown by the passport found in the victim's metal trunk. Very well then, back to your testimony about the contents of this notebook. So the passport allowed for another person to come along, which at the time was supposed to be Gina, right? At least that's what Gregson said, because he was going to protect her from the Reaper. But now, if it's true that he was over there, he still brought someone along with him who could have been Jigoku? Also, I just noticed for the very first time, this part of the background here where they've copy-pasted the lines in this pillar and they put this one just a little bit too close. It kind of bothers me. And then if you look at this one, they didn't put in the shadow line at all. Anyway, fine. Something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? You seemed a little shocked by something a moment ago. Oh, no, it's all right. I'm overthinking this, aren't I? Names of victims, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Names of victims, dates, places, and stuff? What in particular? Well, beside the victims' names, this other name kept cropping up. What other name was that? It's the one I told you yesterday. The same name written over and over again. You mean... Assassin? Yeah, that's the one. She's a friend of yours or something, isn't she? Were you even listening yesterday? Assassin. The assassin. What? Like a killer, you mean? Gregson was the tactician, the one who came up with the plan of attack. He investigated the marks thoroughly, finding out when they would be vulnerable and who to use to get at them. The person actually executing the plans was someone else, you're saying. If that's true, then the Reaper does indeed start to sound like an organized group of vigilantes. Then perhaps what it said on the passport document, permission for the applicant and one additional person to travel, could that additional person have been clearly the assassin who was meant to take Seishiro Jigoku's life? Gina, can you confirm that against the final entry that listed Grouse and Seishiro Jigoku? What name was written? Oh, well, that's the only entry that didn't have a name next to it as it happens. What? It just had the question mark or some up there, I think. In other words, Gregson himself didn't know the identity of the assassin in that case. But Gregson was the one making the plans, was he not? Oh, how infuriating. A nameless assassin? Said Grouse, and then the name of the mark. Okay. And you're saying that the mark listed was Seishiro Jigoku? That's what it said. Funny name, if you ask me. Yeah, I thought your name was odd. So, pleased to have lost my crown there. Mr. Jigoku is the presiding judge of Japan's Supreme Court of Judicature. I remember the man. He came to our country as a visiting student 16 years ago, studying international law and diplomacy under your tutelage, Lord Strongheart. That bearded young fellow was a very able man, I must say. So Lord Strongheart was Judge Jigoku's mentor. If I'm not mistaken, he returned to Japan 10 years ago now. 10 years ago, after that fateful case. Precisely. In the aftermath of the Professor case, his repatriation was organized immediately. It's a mystery why such a man would be listed in the inspector's notebook. I didn't think it was possible, but the mood in here's got even worse now. Maybe we'll just keep talking. Sure. There was a note about him being a criminal.
Hold it!
What do you mean, a criminal? Judge Jigoku is no criminal. Well, don't ask me. I don't know nothing about it. Oh, do you remember what Father told us? That Judge Jigoku did once appear in court here in Britain. It was related to the Professor case, I'm sure. Yes, of course, you're right. Seishiro was trying to mitigate Genshin's guilt, so he took to the stand to testify. But he got a little carried away and actually managed to break the witness stand. He also said some contemptuous words about the British Empire, for which he was charged. It was a pitiful situation, yes. I'd forgotten all about it, but I prosecuted that trial too, as it happens. You did? It was considered to be an adjunct to the professor proceedings, you see. but he was acquitted after being told to make reparation for the damage caused to the stand. And there you have it. Of what? Surely the accused hasn't forgotten his own rule. That there's no saving anyone who faces the Reaper in court, guilty or innocent alike. What? No. Are you suggesting that the reason Judge Jigoku was targeted for assassination? The man was sent back to Japan immediately after that trial. The Reaper had no time to do his work. But then, 10 years later, the mark returns to Britain once more. Perhaps now you start to see just how vindictive the Reaper is. Come on, it's absurd. To take someone's life for that? Isn't the whole premise of the Reaper absurd, killing those people who've been found innocent? Clearly the rules by which the man operates are beyond the sane person's comprehension. But what?
Right, I've had just about enough of this.
Gina.
All this nonsense about the boss planning to kill people, it's cobblers. Come on, Odo.
Yes?
Why aren't you saying nothing? What? Why aren't you yelling out objection or something?
What?
You've got to find a flaw. You do, usually. Someone's lying here, no question. You've got to work out who it is. Please, for the boss.
That outburst was an insult to the court and to your own testimony. I might have known. The common pickpocket from the back slums couldn't make a detective. When this trial is over, you will forfeit your warrant card, Mr. Strad. Is that clear?
I've had it with the lot of you. It's lies every bleeding place you look in this world, innit? But I've had enough.
So have I. After that little speech of Gina's, I've made up my mind. To do what, Mr. Naruhodo? There was one point in this cross-examination when something that was just said just didn't sit right with me. One statement that seemed odd. Oh, do you mean... I'm not going to let Gina's plea for help fall on deaf ears. What do you mean, one?
Hold it!
I want to thank you, Gina. You helped me find my resolve. Hey, he said the thing. What do you mean? Amongst everything we've heard during this cross-examination, there's one thing. It defies explanation. One inconsistency. What? An inconsistency? In my courtroom? At this time of year?
Really, Odo?
I don't quite know what it means yet, but... yes, there's an inconsistency in something that was said by... I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Well, I mean, there's only so many options here, huh?
Take that!
Why you, Kazuma Sogi? Me. Is this some attempt at filibustering, counsel? Prosecutor Asogi has given no testimony, suggesting I said that was inconsistent. You let something slip that you shouldn't have. When I present the relevant piece of evidence, I imagine you'll realize what you've done. Even I wish I'd known what it was, though. Very well, Counsel, go ahead. What evidence reveals this alleged inconsistency? Oh, good. This is as far as it goes back. So how the hell are you even supposed to figure this one out?
Take that!
This is a trunk that belongs to Inspector Gregson. Metal construction, is it? It's certainly very heavy. What's this? A bloodstain. And a relatively fresh one, too.
What? You mean that ain't grease from all the boss's fish and chips?
Fresh blood on the inspector's trunk. That suggests that the victim was traveling with that luggage when he was killed. That can't be. There was no mention of any trunk in Scotland Yard's report. Yes, there's a reason for that. Immediately after the inspector's body was discovered, one of the street peddlers made off with the trunk, hoping to sell it.
But I found it. Me with me nose for trouble.
Which means that nobody should have known anything about the trunk. Unless, of course, we're talking about somebody who was present when the victim was killed. And yet, during the cross-examination of the witness just now, you said this, Kazuma. At the time he was making his way to the steamship docked on the northern coast of France, as shown by the passport found in the victim's metal trunk. Did he say that? So the question is, how did you know about the inspector's trunk? We know the man went on a trip to France. Where else would he have put his passport?
Objection!
But you knew it was a metal trunk. Answer me honestly, Kazuma. On the 31st of October, where exactly were you? At the port of Dunkirk, on board the SS Grouse. Is that the answer you're looking for, Ryunosuke? Kazuma, what did you... I hadn't considered the possibility before, but if Kazuma was there on the ship, then it can only have been for one purpose.
Oh no, Mr. Naruhodo, surely you don't think...
Come on, Ryunosuke, you know the rules. The only thing that really talks in the courtroom is hard evidence. As I understand it, Inspector Gregson always took that case with him when he traveled. So as it stands, you've proved nothing. Kazuma, are you challenging me to prove it, beyond all reasonable doubt? That you were there that day, in the same place as the inspector. He was there? With Gregson? There's a clue that you've overlooked, a secret that trunk can tell us. I can't be sure at this point, I'll need to verify it, but I have a nasty feeling that I'm going to be right. The accusation being made is deeply disturbing, but nevertheless we must test it. The defense will identify for the court where in the trunk this alleged clue is to be found. Where's the evidence that ties Prosecutor Asogi to Inspector Gregson? Well, I knew this was coming when I first saw the damn thing. But it looks like I still have to look at it so that it gets added to the record or whatever. Present!
Got it!
There's a small piece of metal lodged in the wall of the trunk here, like the tip of a blade.
Hey, a blade?
Kazuma, slung around your waist as ever today, is the esteemed blade Kuruma. Of course it is. Won't you draw it, here in this courtroom, for all to see? Exercise caution, my learned friend. That man is the son of London's most notorious killer. Bailiff, watch Prosecutor Asogi like a hawk. That won't be necessary. Then it's what, the other sword?
Oh no.
The tip is broken. If the fragment of metal from the trunk fits together with the end of the sword, the question of who was there with Inspector Gregson will be answered. Agreed, Kazuma Asogi? Expertly done, Ryunosuke. That's a point to you, and well deserved. Do you mean to tell the court, Prosecutor Asogi? Yes, on the 31st of October, I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk in order to carry out a mission. So the additional person authorized to travel was me. And the mission was the assassination of the Mark. What?
No.
You mean you're the killer whose name was omitted from this notebook? You were following the Reaper's orders to dispatch Judge Jigoku. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. I have killed no one. Explain. I accepted the assassination mission, yes, and I accompanied Gregson to Dunkirk, but I never had any intention of carrying out the plan. You were never going to do it. We can believe Kazuma-sama, I'm sure. After all, Judge Jigoku arrived safely in London the following day. On the 31st, I boarded a train from London with Inspector Gregson. We traveled to Dover, from where we crossed the Channel to Dunkirk. Then we boarded the SS Grouse and made for the cabin deck, as indicated in the plan. Went to Judge Jigoku's cabin? Exactly. He wasn't there, though. We decided to wait, but you've already told us you had no intention of going through with it anyway. I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent that night at a boarding house in the town, and returned to England the following morning. Boarding house in Dunkirk? My signature will be in the register book. It would be simple enough to verify. It'll only take like a week. Then what became of Jigoku? Gregson was no assassin, so the Mark was spared. I'm sure it's easy enough to imagine what happened after that. Gregson returned to England as well, having failed to complete the mission. He met with the Reaper in that room on Fresno Street to report the failure, causing the infuriated mastermind to pull the trigger and end his wretched agent's life. Pull the trigger. Pull the trigger. Is that how Gregson died? Victim was shot in the chest at close range, right, because of the scorch mark. Oh my god, what if it's not Barak Van Zeeks? What if it's his brother? Since no one seems to die in this game. Well, that's not true, because what's-his-face from the very beginning, who I honestly thought was going to come back at some point, has yet to do so. Maybe it's him. That's the real truth behind Inspector Gregson's murder. But if you did nothing as you claim, how did the tip of your sword come to be lodged in the inspector's trunk? I don't need to answer that. The victim was killed by a gunshot. A small fragment of a Japanese blade isn't relevant to the case. And accordingly, I chose to exercise my right to silence on that matter. Be that as it may, the court will sequester the sword as evidence. As you wish, my lord. I'll take a look at that. We must take immediate action now to verify whether Seishiro Jigoku remains unharmed. Okay, but first I gotta check out this sword. Kuruma, the Great Blade. Such a thing of beauty. I want to gaze on it for hours. The tip of the great sword, broken. Such a shame. Been so meticulously cared for over the years. I can almost hear Kuruma's sobs. You're weird, Mr. Naruhodo. Kazuma must have really taken a swing for that to happen. Guess? Like, what else are we supposed to look at here? Guess that's it. Just commentary on it. Remains unharmed? I agree. That should be our first priority. It's recently come to my attention that he hasn't been seen since yesterday. How did you... When a foreign dignitary invited to Great Britain goes missing for 24 hours, it's only natural that the question of his safety should arise. You don't mean to say that you think Judge Jigoku may have been killed? The Reaper has more than one assassin at his disposal, and he has the power and influence to give orders from the inside of a prison cell. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zieks? If I were truly the Reaper, I'd be able to tell you. Order. Order in court. Order! We will take an emergency recess for 30 minutes. Now? Guests of the symposium have been told to maintain regular contact with the organizer's office. The man can't be located within half an hour. We'll have to assume the worst. No, not Judge Jigoku. No one would want to kill a harmless Japanese man who had only just arrived in the country. Except, that is, for the Reaper, wanting to finish off a mark that slipped through the net 10 years ago. I would have to agree. Mr. Naruhodo, for the defense's sake. My lord? I sincerely hope we are successful. If we're unable to confirm Mr. Jigoku's healthy existence in the next 30 minutes, we will face grave difficulties. Now? Court is adjourned for 30 minutes. Kazuma-sama, the Reaper's assassin. I feel as though I'm in a nightmare. I can hardly believe it either, but on the other hand, Kazuma isn't in the habit of making up stories. I have such a terrible sense of foreboding. If something awful has happened to Judge Jigoku, then I feel as though things will only spiral further and further out of control. I felt it from the moment I stepped into the courthouse this morning. That strange sensation that we were careering towards a foregone conclusion. Well, in the worst case, we might only have 30 minutes left. Unfortunately, though, I don't think there's anything we can do but wait now. We're out of options. Actually, there may be one last hand we can play. Or rather, one last ear. Of course. The little Mr. Sholmes doll that Iris gave us. If for some reason you completely run out of options in the trial today, then just pull this little Hurley's ears as hard as you possibly can. Perhaps now is the time. What should I do? Pull Harley's ears or not? Well, okay. I feel like we haven't run out of options, but okay. Good luck, Mr. Naruhodo. No looking back. Eve! Ow! That scream sounded like Mr. Sholmes. Mr. Sholmes? Where are you? Here, my dear fellow, here. It's the felt doll talking. 12 years again, Mr. Naruhodo, as hard as you can. Alright then, I'll put all my strength into it. Eve! Ow. Please, my dear fellows, you don't need to pull my hair off. Mr. Sholmes, where are you? Myself and my trusty partner. Are presently in the first-class cabin area of the SS Grouse. The SS Grouse? She left over last night after the final pieces of cargo were loaded. We are currently docked at Dunkirk. So, hold on a tick. The little mouse he's got, I would presume, comes with the costume change. Similar to the one that Ryunosuke's costume also has. So if I didn't switch the costume and he was currently wearing his old costume, would he also have that mouse on there? Or what, does that change what the microphone is? Let's see, we are currently docked at Dunkirk, but due to be underway again in half an hour. You've taken a ship to France? Please, even with my athletic prowess, I would struggle to jump the Straits of Dover. After all, we left at Baker Street last night. We hurried by cab to the station and by train to the port. In order to board this vessel in time. So, you mean you'd already worked it out? That the steamship was where everything really took place? Mr. Naruhodo, pray, what is my name? Sherlock Holmes, world-famous great detective. Recited to perfection. Well done. You're a genius, Mr. Sholmes. That's the only word for it. What is going on with that thing? Miss Usato, gently with this genius's ear, please. I'm ever so sorry. I may, Sholmes? Ah, there you are, Mikotoba. You may remember that it was in fact I who made the connection to SS Grouse at Scotland Yard yesterday when we examined that notebook and I recalled my steamship ticket. Oh, is that who we are now? We've jumped over? But of course it was, my dear fellow. And not once did I controvert that fact. I merely had our court-bound companions utter my name. Yes, you did, didn't you? We've just entered a recess. The trial resumes in 30 minutes from now. And if we're unable to present any new leads, then I'm afraid to say... Do not fret, please. It's for precisely that purpose that my partner and I have made this journey. I have no doubt we shall have welcome news for you within the half hour. Thank you, Mr. Sholmes. That would be wonderful. Until later, then. Yes, you'll be hearing from us if you're not in touch first. I shan't be hearing anything if you keep tugging my ear in that mindless fashion. Whatever was the idea behind making a receiver operated in that way in the first place, Sholmes? Why the deuce would I know? It's Iris's invention, not mine. Are we not done yet? Like, what the hell? Whilst I know how much you enjoy being the hero of the hour, Sholmes, we have but half that now before the grouse puts to sea again. We don't... sorry, Jesus. If we don't conclude our investigations rapidly, we shall find ourselves in Naples before long. There are times, Mikotoba, when you make a surprising amount of sense. So, let us begin. First class cabin number 2. Yes, this is the one. But I don't believe an investigation of the cabin is going to be plain sailing. That crewman standing in front of the door is an angry-looking fellow. This looks like the Russian, but is he Russian this time? I don't know. Why are you loitering here? Who are you? Fuck, okay. I thought maybe we'd get a little bit of a chance to stop here, but... My dear fellow, do you not recognize the world-famous great detective when you see one? The question really ought to be, who are you? It is Stroganoff. Do you not recognize world-traveling great sailor? Chicken Stroganoff? Oh, okay, when you see. Great detective. I don't think so. Do you see that, Mikotoba? It would appear that this man is a devoted follower of mine. Goodness me, is that a tattoo that says Sholmes? I doubt it's a tattoo. I must say, whilst such adoration is flattering, naturally, it does leave me a little cold. What are you talking about? Leaf, now. Distressing. My loyal devotee knows me only by name, and not by appearance. I mean, look what you're wearing. And yet, I already know a great deal about you, sir. You have a brother, I believe. Like yourself, he's a shipman. Currently traveling the world aboard a Russian steamship, in fact. How do you know this? Elementary, my dear. Mikotoba. What? I'm not the one who said it. I'm sure it was. 3 days ago, I was bound for London aboard the ship, you see. We're looking for one of my fellow passengers, a man by the name of Jigoku. But there is no one with his name on board. But we know that he purchased a ticket for passage. Ah, you mean Easterman. He left ship 2 hours ago. Here in Dunkirk, he said something about emergency, I think. What? Are you sure? So Seishiro has realized that we're after him, has he? His cabin is the one behind you. We should like to investigate, please. No. I have orders not to let even mouse inside. Mikotoba, be a good man and draw this sailor's attention away, would you? Make up some excuse so that he leaves the area. Doesn't great detective see that even sailors have ears, both left and right? Cassius, plan is ruined. And you have only yourself to blame, I'm afraid, Holmes. Forget it, cabin door is locked. Even if I am not here, you cannot get inside. Mikotoba, I'm sure you haven't forgotten my special talent, have you? Opening any lock? Within a mere 5 seconds. So, if you'd be so kind as to afford me the requisite time, old friend, in your typically accommodating manner. How could I refuse such a typically unappealing request, old friend? So, I need to distract that burly sailor for 5 seconds, do I? Good man, so, the game is afoot. Okay, we'll end this one here. I'll see you next time.